going to be a short selection meeting this week?
Yeah, we've already had a brief chat, but post-training we'll get together again, and it's when you perform the way you do, if you perform well, I often like to keep the side similar. Everyone's played their role in a way to a team performance, and so we'll have a look at that because the lists were healthy. I think we've got everyone available this weekend, which is great. And we play a different venue and a different opposition, and there are things that we have to look at. But there's a chance we may go a bit smaller. But again, I've always liked to back in a group that perform and get a result.
When you say smaller, does that go around whether I guess maybe Dan was a bit quiet for most of the game? Is that where you look at where you maybe got him as a sub, or rather than giving you subbed out Taylor Walker, to kind of rest him? Is that where you kind of look at 3 or 4 key calls? Different things like that along those lines. Yeah, how do we change our mix slightly if we feel we need to? And it's all dependent on our opposition as well, the venue we're at. We know MCG is a larger ground, so we'll keep an eye on things. But again, it comes back to a group performing really well and the cohesion being strong. Do you change that? So we're just in that space. Plus, we've got to get through a session where I've mentioned to you guys, we go hard and we bash and crash, and as soon as you talk about locking things in, before you know it, it's Murphy's Law, you get an injury. So hopefully we get through training, but we go hard today, and then we've got availability and we can make the right decisions.
What did you make of Dan's performance, and how do you get him more involved in a game like that?
Well, it's interesting. It depends on what you call by involved, because from our point of view, we look at him playing a role in our side. Not everyone can come in and have 30 possessions, and we've got guys in different roles, and he plays a certain role for us. It's not high possession. It's a lot about positioning, a lot about what we're asking him to do. He plays a number of different roles in it. And for a young guy, he performed to the level we wanted him to on the weekend. There's always work-ons. I mean, every guy from the game's got to work on. I thought Laddie had one of his best games, and we're still working on things. Joshua Shelley had one of his strongest games, and he's still working on stuff. So it all comes back to team for us. How do we perform as a team, and what's he played within that? I think we've got to be mindful of not looking at a stat sheet at the end of the game and going, oh, well, he's had 4 kicks, he must have had a bad game, because that's not the case.
Is that the role he's going to play predominantly this year, or will he maybe go around the ball, down back? Given he's so versatile, and coaches have said we don't know what his best position is. Is that, how's that come?
Well, and that's I guess that's the key for us, the positive out of all of it. He is versatile, he's hard to match up on. And he's shown he can play multiple positions. We brought him here as a defender. We know he's played on ball prior to the AFL level. We're not going to do that to him just yet. And now he's playing forward to the ball, and he's shown us enough to be selected in our first side, where some others are pretty stiff to miss out. So, we're making decisions around both this week and longer term.
You touch on Rush, obviously. I think you mentioned a couple of weeks ago how his pre-season was. Given everything that happened at the end of last year, how huge was it for him to come out round one and get that reward for his pre-season?
Yeah, reward for putting his head down and going to work, and not a surprise actually. I thought it was a really complete game right across the board. Everything he did with the ball in hand, stuff he was doing where it's not going to be looked at, unless of course some of the guys on the couch dig a little deeper and have a look. Some of his off-ball stuff was outstanding, and I think he's learning from Alex Neil-Bullen, Ben Keys, the way he goes about it. These guys, it's contagious when you get these guys in, and the respect level for, I'll use Alex as an example, the respect level that he's got already from our group. Our guys watch him. They watch and learn, and there are small things that we're now starting to bring into our game, which we've done now for one major round, a couple of pracky matches. The key now is for us to keep doing it.
What did you think of Sid Draper's performance, and did he do enough to not be the sub this week and start?
Well, he did exactly what we asked of him in a role. That doesn't mean that that there's a deserving of a different role. We see the sub role as important as any other role. Again, people think maybe 4 quarters is a reward for a player, not necessarily. Where some guys are at in their career, it's the perfect role for them. I think where Sid's at, the advantage he brings to our side coming on slightly fresh if we're able to do that, which we've been able to do now for a couple of weeks, I think he shows the impact he can have. There'll be a point where we make a decision, someone else might be this weekend, but
again, I've still got another hour or so to wait before we do that.
Is that still partially trying to manage him a little bit? I know he's managed a bit throughout the pre-season as well.
It's not all about Sid. It's about team. So when we make decisions around what Sid Draper's going to do, it's very much off the back of what is the team doing, what do we feel is best for the team, how do we come away ultimately with the result we're after.
Is he ready to play 4 quarters yet? Is his body ready?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's done the work. I think we've seen it across the years, and there are teams at the moment who are playing some of the younger guys. You can probably pump out a 4-quarter effort at this point as an 18-year-old and get it done. It's as you start to get to that middle part and later in the season that it becomes pretty tough when you've had one pre-season at the level. And I think you start to see a slight drop-off. And that's what we're looking at. We're not just looking at round 2 now, we're looking at where we're at come round 10.
I think you touched on it a little bit in your post-match. You asked about your messaging, and a lot was about keeping the eyes lowered and leading up to round 1. Now that you've got that done, how have you gone about it this week about, again, resetting that focus? What's sort of been that messaging to the players?
Well, it's an easy one for us because the reward we got from staying focused on what we needed to got us the result we're after. We played, we had the detail there. We didn't spend any more time on St Kilda other than the week that we did leading in, so 3 or 4 days prior, and we've done the same this week. So we started on Essendon today. And we'll get that detail right, and that's where our focus will be at. It's week to week. We're basically going through the same process we did last week, but it's more about not losing our focus elsewhere. It's what have we got to do right now? Well, right now we're Saturday.
Just the MCG factor too. We haven't won there for so long as a club. I know every game's worth 4 points and long season and whatnot, but it'll be a massive win. Some wins would be bigger than others, wouldn't they? If you do.
Yeah, this week will be a huge win. As will round 3 be a huge win. But you're right. MCG is one we haven't won for a while. It is what it is. It's not. We're looking at how do we beat Essendon. We've played some really good footy on it. We just haven't got the results we're after over the last couple of years. We've come away with some close or narrow losses. We've worked on a lot of those areas about, it's not that we're playing bad footy on the SCG and we've got an issue travelling. It's tough to play there. When you do play teams that play there regularly, it's a larger field, a lot wider, a lot more space to work in, and it's actually one thing we like. We quite enjoy that, but it's one thing to like it and one thing to get over the line and get a win.
Yeah, the journey of your club though would be quite significant, wouldn't it?
It'd be great, yep. That's what we're going there for.
For a group that's struggled on the road a little bit in the past, do you sort of draw on a little bit that winning Brisbane in the pre-season that you can go and do it against a good opposition on the road? Because again, I'm going to say it's like any other game, but clearly that's one thing that's probably been a little bit of a struggle for you recently.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can only tell you what we're doing within the walls. We haven't spoken about it. There hasn't been one chat about on the road. We talked about some things that we've got to get right, like being prepared for what we do when we do travel. Watching last week's hit-outs on the MCG and it being a bit slippery and things like that. We're watching things like that, but we're not talking about our record in the past. That's gone. We're talking about what we're doing right now. We're feeling really confident in what we're doing. Doesn't mean it's just going to happen, but we're trying to stay focused on why we're in that confident space. So continue to believe in ourselves, and it won't matter where we're playing. This week we've talked about, as I mentioned, Essendon. What did we do well last week? Where can we be better again this week?
Is it a growing rivalry? 2 teams that are trying to make finals haven't had a lot of success. 2 games less than a kick. Draper incident, Rochelli's goal late on. Are the 2 teams sort of building a little bit of a rivalry between each other?
I think we've had some really good contests, haven't we, over the last few times out. I'm not sure it's a rivalry as such. I think that's sort of where we've been at a lot with a lot of teams over the last couple of years. We've had a lot of narrow losses, which we want to turn around and come out on the other end. As you mentioned, Brisbane was one in the pre-season, which we had a good chat at 3/4 time about what we were there for. One, to improve and get better, but in the end, we wanted to win that game of footy, just to feel what it was like to get over the line, and we got lucky in that because we got a lot of things wrong. But again, we learned, and hopefully we can bring that into this week if it's close.
When we look at some of the games really top level midfielders such as Marcus Bonapelli, he kind of starts the middle, goes forward and becomes a weapon. Is that what the plan is with Jordan Dawson this year? I guess he's been so versatile in the past, but against St Kilda, he's really able to go forward, use his contested mark and become a weapon forward of the ball.
Yeah, well, it's a bonus that we've got, a healthy list, that we have guys that are playing at the moment, a number of guys that can play midfield. And so off the back of that, Jordan's then got some flexibility in what we do there. And he gets a lot of attention, Dorse. He the opposition rightfully put a lot of attention onto him, so there's things we can work with, around his flexibility. He can play multiple positions. So that gives us a chance to pull the oppo apart maybe for 5 minutes and also give him a chance forward to the ball. That's a bonus. But I think it comes back to where our group's at, that we've got a pretty even balance across the group of performance at the moment. Guys really pushing for selection, especially through that midfield. And so we've got flexibility.
How's Hex pulled up? And is it a bit of a luxury at the moment? You can almost sub him off and choose only play him a certain amount of games because you've got the cattle up pulled?
There's a few reasons. Obviously, 6-day break. And one thing that we are going to, openly, we've talked about how we manage him through the season. A lot of opinions out there about where he's at. There's a couple of important opinions that would be mine and the rest of the coaching group about where he's at, and we're going to do what we can to have him out on the ground because he's really important to us, not just what he's doing with the ball in hand. I come back to, the danger in looking at a stats page post-game. It was a bonus for us on the weekend that we played such a strong brand of footy up to when we did make the call on the sub, that we could take out such an experienced player. And there's a risk in that, but we're going to have to look at that because, we're going to have to look at playing without him at times from a management point of view.
You're obviously aware of those opinions, obviously aware of some of those opinions, but is part of it for you as well that, now Fogg and Riley are so potent, but Tex still draws a very good defender, and if he doesn't get off the hook, one of them is more likely to because he's drawn that player?
Yeah. Well, I think if you dive into any of it, we've all got a job, right? They've got a job to have an opinion, that's all good. But when you dive into the detail, we all know what Tex brings to our side, and he's very, very important to us, and he's in my best 22 easily. That's the one that matters, yeah?
Sorry, just slightly unrelated, dangers of social media. Adelaide Reds player Josh Cavallo said he's still getting death threats after coming out a few years ago. Is social media and interactions on that still a concern at the elite level of sport?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a deeper one for us to go into. That's just not an elite sport, is it? That's society, I think. There's a lot of stuff going on in that space where social media is dangerous, but it's probably not one that I've prepared myself to have a chat about today.
You guys were damaging out of the middle, sort of broke even around the ground at the stoppages. Essendon were well on top against Hawthorn, plus 23 around the ground. Is that an area you guys are closely paying attention to? And do you expect your group that haven't played a lot of footy will get better in that area?
Yeah, we'll need to. And you nailed it. I mean, we talk about Essendon. Their stoppage stuff is one of their weapons. They're very, very good at it, and then they play a front of centre brand. I think they were 4th best in the comp last year if you talk pure ranking, but they are very good at it. So if the game goes that way and we're in our back half, it's going to be a really tough day for us. So we've done a lot of work around our stoppage. I thought we were solid on the weekend. We'll need to be that and some this weekend.
Just a quick one on Jackson Archer, not the incident itself, but does it prompt you to sort of have a chat to your players about what this year looks like in terms of tribunal outcomes for head-eye contact and that sort of thing, to be more careful than they have been, or how do you?
No. I mean, we're always talking about, we understand the game and understand the risks. We're mindful of us talking about, just ease off when we tackle. We tackle hard. As I mentioned, we're about to go and do it. We train it. It's a really tough one, split-second decisions, and the game's so much easier from the grandstand, believe me. It's hard to make decisions in a split second in our game, but no, we haven't talked about it as a group.
Chase Jones, just back through the sample, I know he's fit. That's right.
Oh yeah, more than likely. I mean, we want to get some footy into Chase. Yep. So he'll play some, get some touch.